Hi, good morning or good afternoon. I'm not too sure what time of the day it is. It could be even good evening. So welcome to Unit 1, Lecture 1 of this semester. I'm not too sure if you've seen my welcome video, but that is available on the site under General. Just to take you through what we're going to do today, this lecture is going to be for both First Additional and Home Language because it's about the teaching methodologies which are part of the teaching of English in the textbook, which is the one I'm going to be referring to. You'll be seeing this as well. On my introduction slide, I did give all my contact information, but I'm going to repeat it here. Hi, I'm Dr. Marcel Heron, and I'm always available at my Embry email address, marcelh@embry.ac.za. So I think that's where you can always access me if you want to email me. I'm always available to help you. Yes, don't forget, learning is fun, always fun. Let's go on. The prescribed text is the Anna Ferreira. It's this one here, plus your CAPS document. These are all available online, and you can go and download them. If you have a problem downloading them or finding them, just drop me a mail and I can maybe upload them onto the Moodle site as well. We've also got a recommended reading, which is really good for the CAPS teaching. It's this one here by Arkeline. I'm going to show you the covers now. This is the language teaching or teaching language by A. Ferreira, which we are using as our textbook. I'll be referring to this a few times during the lesson. And this is the recommended reading by Arkeline on teaching strategies. In chapter 1, they've got a wonderful chapter on the CAPS document, which is your activity 1 and 2 reading to complete your tasks. Right, now, I'm not too sure if any of you have been teachers, but what kind of teacher would you say that you are? There is a whole paragraph about it on page 4, which I'd like you to reflect on. But think about yourself as a person, or the person you see yourself standing in front of the classroom one day. Are you generally an angry person? Anxious, frustrated, overwhelmed? How would that turn out in the classroom? Or are you a naturally happy person? You're always joyful, you're excited, you smile a lot? Or are you quite a miserable and sad person? If you're bored and sad, I don't think any child or learner likes to sit in front of someone who is sad and angry or bored. So you've got to think about how your demeanor is going to affect the classroom. Are you also satisfied and contented person, calm and relaxed no matter what happens? I think if you fall into the yellow and the green categories, I think you've got the makings of being a wonderful teacher because those are all the qualities that are needed in the classroom. So just look at these little scenarios. Is that the result, do you think, will happen in your classroom? Someone sleeping, yawning, feeling bored, you've got to learn to read these signs so you can change your activity. Are you quite an angry person with your finger up and the ruler in your hand? Or are you the type of teacher that sits and works with your students, helping them, guiding them, being a facilitator, not telling them what to do, but working with them? Or do you just love to go on, blah, 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 blah? And I think we all know that it can be quite boring when somebody just goes on and on, just like I'm doing now, and you have to listen to me. So this outline of this lecture is going to be looking at the national curriculum, learning outcomes, looking at language and teaching principles that they've got in there. Then we look at a few teaching methodologies, the fact that you need most of your language teaching to be text-based. That's the approach you need to use. And then as well as integrating a variety of approaches and skills, not just one thing, not just talking, not just speaking, but reading, speaking, listening, writing, all important. Making the students critically aware of the language that they use, that this can have an impact on others, that can be a positive or negative, can make them feel good, it can make them feel bad. So to be able to critically look at language. Also as a teacher, you need to scaffold tasks. You have to need to mediate learning to ensure that your learners will come out at the desired points. We're going to look at different strategies for learning. We're going to look at reading complexity, which is one of the hallmark of success in any schooling situation. And then I'm going to give you a little fun mind map task. Okay. Right, these are the grades R to 9 learning outcomes as part of the NCS. Of course, there's always listening, and in the first few weeks, we're going to look at listening, students listening for information. They've got to take down notes, as well as for enjoyment in reading and other activities like that. Speaking, so important that they can speak confidently in a range of contexts. I was in a grade 8 class last week, and I saw how some students were very, very confident to get up, while others were very fearful and very anxious and very nervous. So you've got to facilitate that and scaffold students so they can actually feel confident when they go up to speak in class. Reading for enjoyment as well as for information. There is research that shows that reading for enjoyment is one of the factors that will result in successful speaking proficiency, writing proficiency, reading proficiency. So to encourage reading not only for information, but also for enjoyment. And then there's always writing, and they will be required to write factual as well as imaginative type of genres. I know they'll be in letter writing, dialogues, and various other kinds of writing. We will only be looking at writing in the second semester. First semester will just be speaking and reading and listening, as well as looking at some literature as well, but writing will happen next semester. Thinking and reasoning. I think this is one of the hallmarks of the 21st century student, that they must be able to access information and then process it, as well as use that information in their learning process. So students have got to become resourceful in finding materials and using them correctly. The last one is language structure and use. I think sometimes teachers are inclined to overdo this section. It only counts about 12% in the whole exam paper. So not to draw too much on that. It's not really going to increase proficiency. They know what the past tense looks like. It's not going to make them a good reader or writer, unfortunately. So they have to be aware of grammar and sounds and words to build their vocab and sentence structures, but it's not the hallmark of all teaching. If you're FET, there are actually only 4 learning outcomes. It's listening and speaking again for all kinds of audiences and purpose and context. It is reading again, and to really evaluate all texts critically so that you can analyze them. Writing and presenting as well for a range of purposes, audiences, with using various conventions and formats, PowerPoint to video conferencing, to all kinds of things to be able to use writing in these situations. And finally, again, language comes in, that you have to know your language structures, the conventions, all kinds of punctuation and use of words are so important. Right, so here's a little activity just to break down from here in the monotony of my voice. So if you compare the LOs for grades R to 9 and grades 10 and 12, if you can remember that far back, you'll notice that learning outcome 5 is not included in the FET outcomes. Now this is what you've got to think about, to reflect on. Why is thinking and reasoning not included as a separate LO? I think if you go back on my video and you go and check those LOs again, you might see some words embedded. So I'm asking you to read critically when you get onto the FET outcomes and see why they didn't have to overtly say thinking and reasoning needed to be included. Okay, that's your task. Right, let's look at the NCS language teaching and learning principles. As you can see from this little diagram, he's really enjoying his reading and what he's doing in class. I hope your students do as well. So we're going to teach language by using text-based text. So as I said to you before, language is text-based, and that's how you've got to teach it. You've got to teach a variety of skills in an integrated manner. So you might how to access information, how to speak about the information, how to write about the information, how to discuss the information, how to break down the information. So those are all different skills you would integrate in the classroom. And again, very importantly, to be able to read critically. I know reading comprehension is one of the most difficult skills for students to actually acquire, from the TEFFS exams to the IELTS to the classroom. So these are things that they've got to practice and learn to understand text and analyze it. As a teacher, you have to mediate and scaffold their learning. So if they're not reaching the required standard, that you are there to facilitate them and help them gain those standards And once they've acquired the skill, then you can withdraw the scaffolding and they can move on as independent learners. You've also got to teach them independent language learning strategies so they can become critical of their own language and their own skills. That you don't have to always tell them everything. They must learn to apply information, understand it, and be independent so they can one day go into the workplace knowing how to use language learning and their strategies for it. Language classes must be learner-centered. Teacher cannot just stand up in front and talk all the time and communicative. That means students must be able to talk and participate. That means group work is so important. That think, pair, share is so important. That asking questions is so important. That the teacher facilitates rather than is the autocratic giver of information all the time. And finally, formative, not only summative assessment, continuous assessment that must happen in the classroom. I know there is formative during the time, but it's not all about the summative final exam. It's about continuously testing and assessing. Right, so let's identify some teaching styles that I think we all know. If you look in the first visual, I think you could quite easily classify that kind of teaching style. Is that your kind of teaching style, or is teaching style you think you're going to have? Or are you more like this, the lecturing type, where your students passively and listen to you all the time? Are you inviting them to participate, or are you just telling them things to do? So think about the kind of classroom you would like to be in and you'd like to have your students participate in, and then identify your teaching style. Right, as I said just now, text-based approaches to language teaching are vital as part of the new curriculum. And while you're doing this, think about what different media you can bring into your classroom. Can you bring in laptops, iPads, tablets, notice boards, anything else but the textbook? Think about, are there any other media forms you could easily integrate into your classroom teaching? What kind of texts could you use? What variety? Not only books, not only the textbook. I was in a class last week where the teacher cut up sections from a newspaper, which is accessible to everybody, to give to a class to try and recognize past tense verbs. So you can use all kinds of text to make your language class exciting. You can use newspapers for referencing conventions, for skimming, for scanning. They're a wonderful source of information, and you can do so much language with them. Then what about visual material? Visual literacy is so important. Students need to be exposed to pictures, to all kinds of images. They need to be able to interpret them, understand them. Just look at this little boy's face. Can you see? It is so visual and beautiful and saying so much to describe that kind of picture. And finally, for them, once you've selected it, for what purpose would you use that? What audience would be appropriate for that text as well? So let your students think critically about the text they choose. If they're going to choose Wikipedia, why? What type of audience is it for? Or they choose some kind of article reference or other reference. So to think about why and for whom they choose their text. Right, so as I said before, we try and integrate a variety of teaching approaches into the language class so we can achieve various learning outcomes. For example, let's think about a poem. How could we integrate something along these lines? If I was to look at a poem, I'd ask my class to write. Happy to be me. Blonde is my hair, blue are my eyes. I'm 50 years old, I wish, and just the right size sometimes. My name is Marcel, and as you can see, I'm very happy to be me. Okay, fun poem. How can we integrate these LOs into this poem? How can we integrate speaking into it? Listening, reading, writing, thinking, and language work. If you think about the words being used, the variety of actions that you can have after reading this poem, how you can use listening, how you can use speaking, and all the other skills. So think about that. How could you integrate various skills and LOs into your language work? Or when you're teaching onomatopoeia, gurgle, mumble, belch. How can you integrate speaking, poetry, listening into all these different ways of hearing sounds in language? The other thing, as you can see, the curriculum really needs students to be very critical of languages that they are being exposed to, and to develop critical understanding and literacy throughout the English learning process is so important. So check your languages. What does it mean to be critically engaged in what you are reading? Students need to be aware that certain texts or most texts carry some values, and these can be negative, sexist type of literature, racist, autocratic, judgmental, or positive. A piece of writing that's democratic, fair, caring, compassionate, and to be able to differentiate between them and actually identify why they are saying it's negative or positive. Also to identify what values are being expressed in a piece of writing. What is the writer's values? Why does he speak about sharing? Why does he speak about being selfish? Is it appropriate to all people? Why are they being expressed? Is selfishness in this piece of reading empowering or disempowering? So for them to think about that, the way words are used, laughter or giggle, shout or scream, whisper or be silent. What is the power of these words, and what values do they add to the piece of writing? Quite an interesting question is, have you ever felt excluded by language? I was in Spain once and everybody was speaking Spanish. I couldn't understand a word. I felt very isolated. I felt very alone. I felt disempowered. I believe that people weren't trying to help me because they would just shout at me because I couldn't understand. So just think about the impact of being excluded by language. When people speak another language in front of you, when people change languages and people use words you don't understand, how jargon can be so isolating for people that don't understand the different terms of golf. If I'm speaking about the fairway or a tee or a golf swing, some people might not know what I'm talking about, but others might well. So you can exclude people by using jargon. Look at this picture. Here you've got the words UFS welcomes you, which should be a very positive, friendly, caring type of message being sent. But if you analyze this picture quite critically, you can see the locked gates and the fence, and the young student on the outside shows that she's not really being welcomed. So to be critical of this kind of visual and think about it and try and understand what message is coming through with it as well. Finally, maybe it's not finally yet, mediating learning and scaffolding. This is one of the vital roles of a language teacher, to really support your learners so they can understand and reach the complexity that you are wanting them to achieve cognitively. When you support and guide your students, you're mediating their learning. If there's no support and no guidance and no explanation and no role modeling, there's no mediation. You can do this in a number of ways. You can provide models or templates for your students to see how something works. If you want them to do an advertisement, you give them a template for an advertisement showing them the different sections, the logos, different spacings, the formatting, and so they can go and create their own advertisement. Encourage them to ask questions, or you ask questions. Not only display questions, which are questions that you know the answer to. What page is the work on? Page 27. That's not very hard. Ask questions, what we call the elicitation or reference type questions, which you don't know the answers to. Why didn't you bring your book to school? And that forces them to answer in a fuller way. What are you doing this afternoon? What are you going to do when you finish this task? Those are answers you don't know. Those are questions you don't know the answer to. And this is going to force you to think about it. Giving them guidance, being aware when students are not understanding something, that they are not working in your class, giving guidance to help them to stay on task. Giving them criteria for what you expect in a task, in the rubric, that you expect 5 items in the list. There mustn't be more than 6 words each. There must be no punctuation for the bullets, so that when they do the task, they've got a clear understanding of what they should do. Tell them how you're going to evaluate the task. Give them that rubric before, So they can see that there's 10 marks for language, there's 20 marks for an introduction, that there's 5 marks for neatness, whatever it might be, that they know how you're going to evaluate them, that nothing is hidden from them, that they know exactly what they are in store for. Other ways you can help them find key points, help them make lists, help them read instructions, so that when these happen, they can do the task correctly. So if you're trying to teach your students some vocab or how to enjoy reading or how to analyze advertisements, think of the different strategies that you could implement to help them, how you could facilitate their learning, looking at the different ways that I've listed on the left-hand side here, and try and just choose one and just note down how you could facilitate this task. Then the good thing is, once they can work independently, you can take that scaffolding away and they become independent learners then. And this is the level we want them to reach in proficiency, to be critical, independent language users. Right, strategies for learning. Learners need to develop strategies to become better without your support. Okay, you don't have to be the teacher, you have to be the teacher to mediate, but you want them to become independent learners. Right, so for instance, you want them to develop some reading strategies, and there are different speed reading strategies. For instance, you want to teach them how to skim headlines for main ideas. So you could get a newspaper, and in groups they could actually underline the key points or the main points in those headlines. You can use dictionaries or any kind of text where they can scan for looking for information. If they are looking for a word in dictionary, they're not going to read the whole dictionary. They're going to scan for that alphabet number and look up the entry. Instructions carefully. When you've got 10 things to do, you've got to read those instructions very, very carefully, and you can teach them how to do it. You can demonstrate as well. One of the best ways to improve learning strategies is to improve reading skills, because if students can't read fast enough, or they can't sound words, or they don't know certain vocab, it's going to slow down reading speed, and then that impacts on understanding. And I thought a good way to do this is for you to go and check your reading speed. And I did a whiz around on Google, and I saw that there are quite a few free sites where you can go and test your reading speed. It might be interesting just to find out what it is. For instance, readingsoft.com, speeder.com. These are all different sites. Go on the internet, check it out, and see what your reading speed is. And finally, teach them how to use content pages, indexes at the back of books, reference books, catalogs, keywords to search for information. This makes them more independent learners and helps them to find information quickly, and that's so important. Right, this is going back to reading complexity. It's one of the CAPS task teams seeing that reading is still at a very low level in our country, and this needs to be developed. Students need to be able to read more efficiently and effectively. So if you're an adult, you are actually speaking at the rate of 200 to 250 words a minute. If you read slower than this, often you don't understand what you're reading and you fall asleep because your brain gets very bored if you are reading too slowly. If you're a college student, you should be able to read about 300 words a minute, because you're reading all the time, so your speed does increase. So go and test your speed of reading and see where you fit in. We speak at 160 words a minute, so relative to reading, that's actually quite slow. And if you speak very slowly, people become bored as well, because it's very hard to listen to somebody that is speaking very slowly. The same as it's very hard to listen to someone who speaks quite quickly, which I do sometimes, and then I fall over my words. And it can also be annoying for people and for me. But the wonderful thing is that we speak, we think at an amazing rate. What a wonderful brain. It's actually 4 times the speed of reading that we're thinking at. So we're thinking at 1,000 to 3,000 words a minute. You can just see how amazing the brain is. We have taken in what someone's going to say before they've said it. before we finish reading something, we know what it's going to be about. So it's an amazing faculty that our brain has. And you've got lots of listening time, active listening time. If you don't use it properly, you're going to become bored and you're going to fall asleep and you're going to daydream. So it's good to use that time for taking notes, underlining things. Note-taking is so important. And if you are listening, you are not planning those menus or thinking about what you're going to say to the speaker. You're listening to what they are saying. Reading complexity. Let's come back to reading complexity. Reading is very hard. I know somebody who's now 10 and has learned to read, and it's amazing. It's fascinating to see how she reads. Her sister reads all the Harry Potter books, and she's in grade 6 now. So reading skills develop. So you've got to discern when you read the different sounds of words, and when you're starting to read, it's quite difficult. You've got to interpret various combinations of letters, and if you don't know the word, it slows down the whole reading process because you've got to sound it out. And unfortunately, if your students cannot associate sounds with letters, there's going to be huge reading difficulties for that student. So they need to be facilitated and assisted. Right, so what's next? We're going to look at a little task for you, which might be quite fun. Let's see what it is. I want you to brainstorm your reading strengths and challenges. Your strength could be that you really enjoy reading, and a challenge might be that you're quite lazy about reading. So think about 5 things that you can class yourself as a strength of your reading, and about 5 things that are challenges if you can. Then I want you to design a mind map. There are 2 sites you can check out online. It's poplet.com, which makes quite cute little mind maps online, or you can go to Mind Map Free, which also gives a nice mind map. So for instance, with Mind Map Free, you would place reading in the center here, and then you'd put all your challenges at the top, and all your challenges in red, I think, and then the others in green, the benefits and the strengths that you have. Or you can go to poplet.com. That's what it looks like. It's quite a nice little site. It's got a place where you put visuals in. You could then branch out and say reading strengths this side and reading weaknesses that side. It's quite easy to follow. If you're battling to find these sites, just get back to me. So I would like you to try these little tasks. So think about your reading strategies. Think about your strengths with reading. Think about your reading speed. Think about how you can mediate and help students in your classroom, how you can integrate text into every lesson, and how you can use a multiple number of different approaches. Also, keep your language class alive and exciting. No one's going to fall asleep, and everyone's going to be actively involved because it's going to be so learner-centered. So you are the creator of your own magical classroom, which students are going to find exciting, and they're going to be wanting to try out language in new ways within that context. So I'm going to see you just after my second video. Sorry, go look at the CAPS document still. And so we'll go on with this lesson then, this lecture. So bye for now. I will be seeing you soon again.